greatest dynasty league in existence is halfway through its season. That's right. We are here today to cover the Angle Dynasty League and how things are going so far for the competitive teams as well as the tanking teams. My name is Andrew. I am your host. This is the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. So we are going to dive in on how the Dynasty League for Angle is playing out so far. But before we do that, we got to speak to the other analysts at Angle who also both each have teams in our league. My team is known as Real Madrid Baloncesto. I am joined by the owner of the San Miguel Beermen, Mitchell. How are you today? You ready to talk about our league?
Pretty good, man. I love to learn more from a competitive aspect from you and Braxton in our league. But, for me, I love to give you my insight from a tanking aspect. So very excited to discuss the best league in the world.
That's right. That's right. And someone who is in the top 10 with me, we are both actively competing, trying to win, trying to go after the inaugural fantasy title, is the owner of the New Zealand Breakers. Braxton, how are you today? Good, sir.
Good man. There's just something about 30 team dynasty basketball that is just has me obsessed, and I love talking about it and I love playing it with you guys. So, very excited.
Yes, especially when you get that money, when you get that salary involved, is when
That-
all three of
oh
our
yeah, yeah,
interests are really peaked.
absolutely.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's see how things are shaping out for the Angle Dynasty League so far. Mitchell is responsible for creating the power rankings of this league. So he released the original power ranks and then released an update to these power rankings. What was that, about a week or two ago? So Mitch has a very good feel for how this league is playing out and how all these teams are built to look moving forward. So Mitchell, run us through, how are things going so far in the Angle Dynasty League?
Things are going great coming from an outside perspective as a tanking team. It's very interesting to see all these teams battle for that top 14 or top 16 seed. So, one thing that's special about this league, yes, we do power rankings, yes, we do video coverage, but if you look at that banner on the top, if you win this league, your name is going to be forever supplanted in Angle Dynasty basketball history, right? So I know Braxton and Andrew, you both are contending here. So as someone who works with both of you, I wish you the best in this upcoming in this season, and hope that, one of your team, whether it's the New Zealand Breakers or the Real Madrid Baloncestos, make it on that banner. So a little cool thing that we do here. In terms of the standings, there have been a pretty small shift, I'd say, at the top, but it's more so in the middle where teams kind of figured out they weren't going to be competitive and they dropped to that tanking tier. But in terms of the top three, we have Blackwater Bossing, who was my number one favorite, in the first edition of the Power Rankings and also the second edition. However, since the second release, he did lose a semi-important figure, more important in terms of a dynasty asset, but even in like a redraft perspective for a contending team, losing Jabari Smith in a 30-team league is a pretty big hit in terms of a competitive value. That's someone who'll give you like 12.7 rebounds and maybe a steal and a block a game. And I know he's actively been trying to package that. So, Andrew, let's go to you. Okay, so in the first edition of the Power Rankings, I had you at number two. I dropped you to fourth or fifth. Given the current standings, you are now in the eighth seed. Is there any reason you think you made that drop? Has there been injuries, some disappointments? Give me an overall recap of how your season is going up to this point.
So there's a little bit of both. So, one of the things that was a problem for me when I started this league was that Derek Lively was my only true center. It was from a trade. I had Steven Adams for a little bit, but he wasn't really a viable option. I did actually draft Jalen Wells in our inaugural rookie draft. I got him with like the second to last pick. It was pick 51. And earlier this season, I traded him to Braxton for Grant Williams. This is when Grant Williams was healthy, and this is also when he had already earned the center designation eligibility-wise. So Grant was a perfect fit for my team. I'm punting field goal percentage. I have threes and points in my build, and he kind of has like that mini Draymond stat set where he gets, assists, rebounds and some steals as well too. So I had him for a couple weeks and things were actually looking up for me when I did, but then he suffered a season-ending injury. So I had to make some changes in order to get past that because obviously I don't have Jalen Wills anymore, and then Grant Williams is hurt, so I'm just left without another productive body. So I did manage to make a trade, sending Grant Williams and Nikola Jovic away in order to get Bobby Portis and the second round pick of a tanking team. So this should be, pick like 30 to 34 or something, or 31 to 34, something around there, once the draft does happen this summer for our next round of rookies. So, could potentially have consolidated or given away a little bit of value in Jovic. But I did that in order to bring in a viable backup center in Bobby Portis, as well as someone who can also make threes, and it's just a good fit to my overall build. So that actually happened last week, so I'm still waiting for things to play out. A couple other reasons. Terry Rozier is not as good as he's always been, and I know my initial ranking of being in second overall, that was before the season started, so we weren't fully aware of how steep of a decline that Terry Rozier was going to have. So that's one reason. And then lately, Dennis Schroeder's performance has gone downwards ever since he got traded from Brooklyn to Golden State. So those are a couple of things that has impacted me. Also, too, I'm assuming when you put my ranking out there, you probably assumed that because you and I both were on the same page. We thought Jalen Tyson was going to play a lot more in his rookie season for Cleveland, and his minutes have been pretty low for them. He's checked in for 21 games, but this is also prior to when they signed Okoro back. We were really speculating that he'd play a lot, and he hasn't been playing as much, and they've been more developing him in the G League. He's probably someone who's going to be better next year. So there's a couple of key figures that didn't do as well for me as we expected. I know Bilal Coulibaly got off to a hot start and it kind of tapered off a little bit recently too. So those are some of the reasons why, I wasn't too mad about dropping from second to fourth. It was understandable just because there were some guys who were not fully performing up to par for me.
Right. And I do want to add that, despite dealing with adversity of some of the trades, position eligibility with the lack of centers, on the bright side, you did turn things around. You traded for Bobby Portis, someone who is having a great month. I believe he's kind of near the top 30 and 40 over the last 2 to 4 weeks, I'd say. And you also have some assets to turn around at the trade deadline when there's going to be some sellers. So you do have that trade chip in Jalen Tyson. And something that you also mentioned is that you do have a low 30s pick from a tanking team in the upcoming draft that you can always dangle around. So let's go on to Braxton's team. Braxton, I apologize. I dropped you to eighth from seventh, and you're really proving me wrong here. You're the third seed right now. Um, I know you're very active on the trades. De'Aaron Fox has been great this year. He's bumping up his points per game. The steals have been consistent. So tell me a little bit about your team and, the direction it's shaping in, because it looks pretty positive in recent weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. I think dropping me down was a bit of a surprise. I think I have the best team on paper, and I don't think it's particularly close. I am a full 12 players deep. I don't really know what my build is. I was a little bit worried about my assists coming into the year, but I've more than covered my tracks on that. With acquisitions like Tyus Jones in the recent days. I don't see myself with any weaknesses besides blocks. I guess actually I'm gonna punt blocks, but I think my build is versatile enough to compete with any team. Norm Powell was huge for me. I had a little bit of a weakness in points early in the season. I made a trade to acquire him. As you mentioned, I'm pretty active on the the trading block. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what else to say other than I think my ranking was a little bit of disrespectful, not in a disrespectful way, but just it's just surprises to me because if I made the rankings, I'd probably be number one or number two.
Well,
Um,
okay, Braxton, to my defense, I base everything in a holistic way in terms of like trade value. So you don't have the most desirable assets compared to those in the top five, given that,
you have a
we
mesh.
did draft both of us in the 20s, which was hard. You know, if you did have a top 5 to 10 pick, you get those real anchors that really kind of cement yourself as one of the top, teams in
Like I did
dynasty
with Shea.
value. Yeah, Shea, the other top teams have like Jokic, Wemby, and whatnot. So I do acknowledge your team is very versatile. There were some surprises with John Collins really, supplanting himself. He started off the bench to start the year under Taylor Hendricks. The injury really propelled him to have a top 50 season. I don't think he's slowing down at any time. And then also Norm Powell, dude's just been balling. He's been a consistent staple for the Clippers. So, and you also have 7 second round picks that you can dangle at the trade deadline. So I
Oh yeah.
assume that you're
There's some
ready
good
to
ones in there. It's
buy
six now, I
your
think, but there's some good
six.
ones in there too. So
Yep,
yeah,
you have
those are
the
gonna be gone.
Bangkok ones,
They're all gonna be gone.
Samurais. So some pretty big upgrades that you can make for the season. So let's go back to the standings. One thing I do want to address before going to the tanking teams, since both of you are in that contending tier that I listed, is there anyone in particular in that tier, I guess like the top 10, uh, that you least want to go up against in the playoffs? I guess we could
Hmm.
start with Andrew and then go on to Braxton.
Hmm. So let's see. So Blackwater has Wemby. That's always something that you want to avoid. But one shout out I want to give is to Beijing. I really like his roster construction, so I'll go in and go look into this further. So he actually acquired Dyson Daniels in a trade. He drafted Jokic. I think he was picked 3 or 4 ahead of me and got Jokic instead of Shea. But then when you look towards the end of his roster, he also has Zachary Richardson stashed in his minors. He had some other players recently like Stephon Castle, but this was just a few days ago. He sent Castle, Mark Williams, and some other assets for Karl Anthony Towns. So now he has a two-headed monster of Jokic and Towns, similar to what I have with Shea and Harden. He has that type of two-headed monster that you really want in a league like this. But he also has Dyson Daniels, which is a huge, potentially a win each week in steals alone with just him. So that plus an excellent value contract in Kobe White. I don't know. Does he have the cap? He actually does not have the cap space to play Richardson right now. So I guess I can't really count him, but I know he's trying to get rid of Aaron Wiggins. And that might be how he is able to play Richardson moving forward. So he does have great players on the roster right now, but he is super top heavy, and an injury could really hurt him because he has 3 roster spots available, but only 3 million cap space to work with. So there's really not much you can do there to fix that. So I think he does need to consolidate some of those bigger money guys in order to give himself some more wiggle room. But just those names, Jokic, Cat, Kobe White, and Dyson Daniels is definitely a very scary combination of players to go up against. So I wanted to find someone else aside from the team that's, comfortably in first and has Wemby on there. And I also wanted to pick someone besides Braxton, just because,
Yeah, the morale on my team is too high. It wouldn't even be close, Andrew. I'll go with let's see. I'm kind of stuck between I like Joy and the Singapore Slingers. He initially was drafted as a tanking team, and he got Jimmy Butler so late in the draft that he decided, you know what, I'm actually gonna try and make a run at this. I got pretty good value on him. I think he's done a really good job at surrounding Jalen Williams with some pieces that are pretty complimentary. I think he's not entirely sure what he's punting. I guess 3 pointers. It's kind of a
Yeah, he's
half
punting
punt
threes.
though. But he's got some really nice pieces. Isaiah Hartenstein is just somebody who he acquired just recently from me, actually, in a John Collins trade. Amongst other pieces, Hartenstein is such a great fit on that team. I think big man stats. He's got quite the efficiency here. I probably would like to see a little bit more on the block side of things. For a build like this, I'm curious to see how it goes up against somebody with Wembanyama. But I think this team is pretty well rounded. One more team I do want to look at is Velez Sarsfield in fourth place. I was just looking at this team recently, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure how it got to fourth place. I'm guessing on the back of Josh Hart. Paolo has been out since before Halloween, and somehow Adrian has found himself in a top five position with his best player being, I guess, Josh Hart. Something about this team, I'm guessing, just meshes exceptionally well and can be concerning in a playoff matchup when you run into a team that just kind of clicks and attacks all of your weaknesses. So this is definitely one to look out for, just based on his success without his best player.
Andrew, let's stay on Adrian's team a little bit
Okay.
before we move on. So, Brax, I love how you pointed out Adrian's team here. What's interesting about Adrian's team is that he's the only team in the top five standings right now that have multiple first round picks to dangle. So I know both of you have
Oh,
some
he's got
second round
four.
picks, four, four tradable ones, right? Yeah, four tradable ones. He has five. So what separates himself from you two in terms of buyers in the trade deadline market is that he has four tradable first round picks. So, you know, first round picks are definitely more desirable than second round picks. So he's going to be able to outbid a lot of these other contenders who are looking to make some last minute upgrades. So Adrian, he is going to be a force. We've known him for over the last 3 to 4 years. He's very active at the trade deadline. He's always going to be down to have a negotiation. I might even have a negotiation with him in the next couple of months. So
Oh, he's
maybe
coming,
he makes,
Adrian.
yeah, I'm coming, I'm coming. He might have Jay Huff on his team. You never know for a
Oh
late
boy.
first round pick. So, um, Adrian is someone who is very scary outside of the other names that you mentioned, and of course, Blackwater Bossing. Before we move on to the tanking teams, I do want to give a quick shout out to our new number two, the Mexico City Capitanes, our friend Gabe from the association
Yes,
server.
shout out to Gabe.
He has a very nice team. A lot of teams with a team with a lot of big men stats with Randall, Jared, and Walker Kessler, but also shot blocking guard Derek White to really kind of mesh and synergize with that type of build. So this guy is very scary moving up. He's kind of separated himself from the pack in his own little tier in the second seed. So yeah, we'll move on to the tanking teams really
Yeah,
quick.
let's see how the battle for Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper is playing out.
So yeah, Andrew, I'll let you lead this part since you're on the outside looking in.
All right. So, in the types of dynasty leagues that we play, such as this one, what we do is we mirror exactly how the NBA lottery odds shapes out. So at the end of this NBA season, from last place to it's like 14 teams stacked on after that, the lottery range. Basically, your team name will be attached to the real life NBA team that finished in the same spot as you. And basically, wherever they end up in the lottery is where you end up. And in NBA rules, all three of the worst teams have the same odds for the number one pick. So as of right now, those three teams are Alba Berlin. Shout out to our friend with the best name out there, Mein Frau hasst Fantasy Basketball, which translates to my wife hates fantasy basketball. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Next up in 29th is the Magnolia Chicken Templados Hot Shots. And then in the third to last spot is Phil, the Los Angeles Lakers. So all three of them are at even odds right now to land the number one pick and should hopefully land within the top three picks for the upcoming draft. But of course, the lottery gods do all weird things all the time. Someone could finish in the bottom three and end up picking seventh. Stuff like that happens all the time. That's the reason why the NBA put this new lottery system out there. There are some other tanking teams that are fairly close to this range. For example, Mitchell, you are currently 5.5 games back from breaking into the bottom three here. But like I said, you could be outside of the bottom three and easily land a number one pick. It happened last year with Atlanta getting us to the number one pick. So there's people who finished, 5-6 spots back from the bottom and ended up getting the number one pick due to that. So the lottery odds could easily change things from here, but right now there are some clear tanking teams. There's also some teams that did not plan to tank, like for example the Bangkok Tigers, who does not own his first round pick but is still down here anyways. And this is something that happens in dynasty leagues. one strategy, I actually call it the Adrian strategy, is there's people who acquire as many first round picks as they can, specifically during the inaugural season of a dynasty basketball league. So a big reason why people do that is because a lot of common misconception that teams have, and someone who pointed this out to me is Case, shout out to him, is a lot of teams in an inaugural season of a dynasty league get pretty overzealous on what they think their playoff odds are. So they're just willy-nilly sending out their own controlled first round pick to try to get some type of upgrade. And then they learn later on that they're not a playoff team. They're a lottery team, but they don't own their first round pick. Somebody else does. So their team being bad is just benefiting somebody else. And that's just, it's naturally something that can happen in a dynasty league. Plenty of times. I've seen it happen plenty of times. So, that's also something that has played out here. But for the real tankers like yourself, Mitchell, how do you feel that battle has been going so far?
Yeah, I love how you brought up that talking point about, after the inaugural draft, a lot of teams are willing to trade away their first round picks. And for that upgrade, when in actuality, it's probably a little bit better to wait till the trade deadline to do that. So um, I went ahead and capitalized on that strategy. So out of the bottom 14 teams in the lottery from 17 to 30, I acquired four picks outside of my own, right? And basically, I was essentially betting against their performance in the upcoming season. And of those teams, all four, as it currently stands, are in the lottery. So I have the Bangkok Tigers pick. A reason why I targeted the Tigers pick was because I noticed their lack of forwards and centers. So I know because of the eligibility rules in Fantrax, you need a forward rotation at all times to make your lineup legal, right? And this guy only had Jalen Smith and Mo Bamba. In the offseason, he traded Josh Giddey and his first for an upgrade at Darius Garland, but he already had Cade Cunningham, Jordan Poole, Garland now, and I believe someone else, and Tyler Hero. So I noticed he can't play all those talented guys at once. So he was easily a team that I wanted to bet up against. Um,
Mitch, what did you trade for that first? Do you remember?
I traded Brisbane, Vince Williams, and Jordan Hawkins for that first and Ben's first. So kind of the same
Okay.
concept with Ben. Ben
Yeah.
went a very big man heavy team. I thought he's probably going to rack up a lot of 5-4 wins if he does end up winning his matchups. But if he loses, he's going to constantly get those 3-6s or 4-5s. So it was a hard kind of path for Ben to get a top seed in that route for this season. And some of the other teams I got were like the South Bay Lakers and what was the other one? And the Syracuse Nationals, who I honestly think is a top 10 team. He just had a lot of nagging injuries like Devin Vassell, Tyrese Maxey, and Desmond Bain. So he should eventually make the playoffs. Some of the other teams that weren't expected to be tanking were the Kanazawa Samurais and the Syracuse Nationals.
And shout out
Um,
to Sacramento too.
yeah, in Sacramento. But luckily, our friend Nick Levin kept his pick, so it could totally end up paying off. I know he loves this prospect in Ace Bailey, so maybe he can get Ace Bailey in this upcoming draft. So let's go ahead and go into my team before we close this off, and then I guess I kind of want to ask you if you wanted to review some of the other tanking teams. So here we have my team. This team, was basically brought in to accumulate as much value and then dump it uh, like a sell point. So for me, one of the things that I did was pick up Jay Huff, pick up Brandon Boston because these were some of the guys on the wire that were trending in the right direction, who could potentially build themselves up to sell for a potential late first round pick at the trade deadline for a team looking to have a little bit of a boost in contention. One thing I do wish that I did, Andrew, was sell you Markelle Fultz for your first round pick. Markelle Fultz is currently not signed right now. I believe you sent me that offer. It was on the table.
Is that
Um,
bad? Is that not
yeah,
good?
It is not
very
good.
bad, very bad. I mean, I'm just holding in hopes that he
You
signs
guys wouldn't do that
somewhere.
trade?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I actually put that on the table or if it was something discussed and I said I wanted to look into different
No,
areas. Like I think
you sent it and I denied it because it was Gabe Vincent and your first for Markel Fultz. I got a little greedy and I was like, add Kevin Herter instead of
That's
Gabe
crazy.
Vincent.
That's crazy.
Um, it's something that I regret because now then seeing you slip a little to the early 20s, it would have been a little, a little extra juice for me to trade at the draft day. So
well,
I'm a little disappointed in that, but I'm very happy with the development of my first round pick, Amen Thompson. He's flashing that top 20 upside that, I really hoped. The stocks are there. The rebounding numbers are insane for a guard and wing. Jalen Green's looking a little bit better after a slow start. And Jalen Suggs has been someone that, I've been pleasantly surprised with in his development as an offensive initiator. Okay, so that's enough about my team. Did you guys want to discuss any other teams in that tanking tier but before we close this podcast?
now we can go check out the LA Lakers really quick. So first off, happy I didn't send that first for for Fultz. My first kind of made a weird roundabout circle. I initially sent it so although I was kind of just talking about how people send their first right away when they don't think, even though they're not sure how good they're going to be, I actually did do that. I did send my first right away, but I was pretty confident in the team that I drafted. It could have easily backfired on me, especially if I sent it for Markel Fultz. But basically, I initially sent my first for Keon Ellis, who was then moved in a deal for Nikola Jovic, who was then moved in a deal for Bobby Portis. So first for a late first for Bobby Portis in the 30-team league. I'm still feeling pretty good about that, especially with the salary that he makes and the type of stats that he does provide for me. But I'll check out one of my other favorite tanking teams. I will give a shout out to Alba Berlin. He's got a good team as well. So the Los Angeles Lakers in this league did not initially plan to tank, but a lot of luck has been on his side to allow him to tank. So there's one thing he can do to consistently take advantage of the Fantrax rules, which is thanks to the Lakers making Anthony Davis probable in every single game, he always has the injury flag that enables him to be stashed in the injured reserve spot. Fantrax does not enforce you to take a person out of the injured reserve spot until 2 days after they've been declared healthy. So with the Lakers declaring Anthony Davis probable every single game, it basically means that this team, which is also the Los Angeles Lakers in this league, gets to keep Anthony Davis in their injured reserve spot pretty much for the entirety of the year. He also had some minors guys that he drafted that he's able to stash in the minor spots to help him tank. Jaime Jaquez and Tristan da Silva are the prime examples right now. He's got some other great young pieces. Oso Ighodaro, Jordan Miller is a great young piece to have too. And then in addition to how fortunate he's been with some injuries, I mean, injuries aren't necessarily a fortunate thing, but to help with the tank, Aaron Gordon's been hurt a lot this year, so that's helping with this tank. And wow, I don't know how I skipped over Rob Dillingham. He's got Rob Dillingham too. So there's a lot of good, promising youth in this team. There's some experienced veterans as well, like Anthony Davis and Aaron Gordon, but injuries is really helping him to hide these guys from his lineup, which is enabling him to tank more. And he's still got Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett too. So this is my candidate to go from tanking to a playoff spot immediately with a 1-year turnaround. If he's adding in, let's say he's got this same roster, okay, but he actually begins to start Anthony Davis. Maybe Rob Dillingham takes on a bigger role once Mike Conley phases out. He moves Da Silva and Hawkins into his main lineup. He's still got Brunson, RJ Barrett, and then let's say next year he adds Kasparis Yakajonas. Amazing situation for Phil and his Lakers team in this league. So that's kind of, he wasn't planning to tank, but a lot of kind of just luck is allowing him to tank, and he's taking advantage of that because he obviously controls both his first and his second round pick. So he will get a lottery pick in the first round, and he will also get an early 30s pick in the second round too, thanks to this ability to tank and kind of just taking advantage of some of the regulations that Fantrax has, which in our league we allow you to do that.
Andrew,
So,
I
Go
think
ahead.
I just want to add, I think luck is a really funny way to describe a team that's in 28th place.
Well, I know. It's luck. It's luck in allowing him to tank despite
I get
having
what you're
several
saying.
veterans. Yeah.
Oh, this guy's so lucky that he's awful, so he can get a good pick.
I mean, the good thing and the silver lining about Phil's team is that no one's getting a massive increase next year. Jalen Brunson had, an extension that kind of mirrors his current contract. AD is gonna make 42 million again, and then all the rest of his guys are honestly like on rookie deals. So Phil's gonna be pretty scary next year, especially if he gets a top 3 pick.
Yeah, definitely. Even if he's like within the top 5, if he's adding Jaeger Damian or VJ Edgecombe, pretty much any of those guys like top 6-ish range, that's going to be a problem once he adds them to a roster like this one. And he can still minor stash, Rob Dillingham, Oso Ighodaro, guys to let them continue to develop in their second year too. So yeah, it's going to be a problem for the rest of us, teams like Braxton and I, to deal with. But of course, you, Mitch, too, you're going to have 40 plus million in cap space next season. And of course, the amount of first round picks that you have accrued too. So some of these tankers are definitely going to be an issue for us competitive teams next season. But follow us on Twitter or Bluesky at Angle Fantasy BB. Check out all of our content on our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we'll see you guys next time.
Call me captain, always gotta look for him. Beat so tight, I almost put a hook on it. Verse so fire, I almost put a cook on it. Had this shit jumping, looking like I put a foot on it. Got 100 on the dash when I book Sonic. Only game that I play, got a rook on it. Got a flow so hard that it looks solid, y'all be cynical.